Hello and welcome to the Superhero Show. I'm not Daniel Krupa, and this definitely isn't Chris Tilley.
Definitely not Chris Tilley.
They're off doing superhero stuff around the world, but we're going to stand in and we're going to talk about the news that Jon Bernthal is the Punisher in Season 2 of Daredevil.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, he's been around from Walking Dead. He was in Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
What do you think about him being cast as Punisher, Frank Castle?
Perfect casting. Like, genuinely, when I saw that, it wasn't someone that I thought to be as him, but then I hadn't really thought of who I'd like to see play Frank Castle again. But when I saw him, I was like, no, that's actually perfect.
Yeah.
Like, he's brilliant. He's horribly, like, rough in everything that he's in. He's an absolute badass, and like, he's just got this stare. Like Fury, he's really, really good in Fury. He's got this stare and really nastiness about him that... But you can't help but sort of really, really like him as well, which is like perfect for the Punisher.
But that was a little bit like his character in Wolf of Wall Street as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's an absolute badass.
Yeah.
But he had, like, you know, quite a likability to him.
Definitely, yeah.
And, you know, we might not get that in Daredevil because Punisher's probably not that much of a likable guy.
No, he's not. And I think it's going to be a really interesting sort of dynamic between the two of them as well. I mean, I think one of the first things that they put out in the release was the Daredevil logo, which is just full of bullets.
Yes.
And like Frank Castle likes a gun.
Yes.
He does. He's an ex-Marine. His family were killed, and he's just gone on a warpath against crime. So any kind of crime, he just does not like it.
So Daredevil and Punisher are pretty much doing the same kind of thing. They're out to rid crime from Hell's Kitchen, but obviously their methods are very, very different.
Very different as well. I mean, it was really interesting, actually, in Daredevil Season 1, he does, the sort of, because he's just becoming Daredevil, he does tackle the sort of, well, you know, there's an episode which is just like, I need to kill Wilson Fisk.
Yeah.
Like, he's, you know, comes to the conclusion that he has to actually kill people.
Yeah.
But then he sort of switches up and goes, actually, I can do this without killing people, because if I kill people, it'll make me as bad as them.
Yeah.
The Punisher does not have that. Like, he doesn't care. He will kill people. And I've always liked that. I think that's why, like, Daredevil and Punisher are probably my two favourite characters.
Okay. So it's perfect for you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always grown up with these two characters, like, absolutely loving them, and they do inhabit each other's worlds. Like, all of the bad guys from Punisher's world are in Daredevil's world, and vice versa. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how they work together in this world they've already built in Daredevil. Yeah,
and in some of the comic books, they've been allies, and in some of the comic books, they've been enemies.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to play out in the TV show? I
think it's going to be enemies. I mean, they're doing the same thing. It's going to be that kind of, you know, Daredevil won't go to the level that Frank Castle will to kill people.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a really, really big element. I hope they don't focus on it too much.
Yeah.
But there's an Easter egg, actually, no spoilers really, but there's a van with a logo that says Atreus Plastics on it. In Daredevil 184, you see this Atreus Plastics, and it's a really, really big element because they've been making these like plastic explosives. Right. And that is the start of a really intense rivalry between Daredevil and Punisher, which ends with Daredevil shooting the Punisher with his own gun.
Right.
So I think having that little Easter egg in it, they're not going to do that if it's not going to, you know, they want people to see that, they want people to come to these conclusions. I don't think they would tease it if it's not going to be a big thing.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So Jon Bernthal also tweeted a picture this week of him with a very specific graphic novel.
It's a very specific one. So it's Garth Ennis's Marvel Knights Punisher #1.
Yeah.
Which would suggest to me that that is going to be the portrayal. So it's going to be very sort of Garth Ennis-y. I mean, for me, if I think the Punisher, I think Garth Ennis.
Gotcha.
The way that he writes him is absolutely perfect. Those comics are just full of really, really funny, like unintentionally funny bits, which the movies just never really got for me. I quite like a lot of the stuff that's in the Punisher films, but for me, it never really got the world because it's a really, really gritty world, but it's also like full of this disgusting comedy, which Garth Ennis is amazing at writing. And I think like, for me, when he was writing The Punisher, that was Garth Ennis's best writing. Yeah. Because he's sort of on the leash of Marvel, and he sort of keeps him in control a little bit, whereas the stuff when he goes off to write his own stuff, I can't read it. Like, I can't read The Boys.
It's just because too much.
It's not too much. He just, I hate swearing in comics.
Right, okay.
And in The Punisher, you don't really get it. So he's sort of reined in a little bit. Yeah. But when he's obviously doing his independent stuff and doing stuff by himself, there's a lot of swearing in it. And I think for me, it's just like, he's a better writer than that. Right. Like it feels to me like swearing is really lazy in comics. Yeah. Whereas in The Punisher that Garth Ennis writes, there's not that much swearing. And it's just really, really funny, even though some of the storylines are just disgusting.
So it's properly brutal.
Really brutal as well. I mean, it deals with some really nasty stuff. Right. And Daredevil's already dealt with that kind of stuff. We've seen the sort of like slave trade and things like that. Yeah. That's perfect for Punisher.
And I think that's the key thing for me, is that it feels like a natural kind of whether you would call him a superhero, I guess, well, vigilante. That environment they've created, Netflix, is perfect for it so far.
Definitely, yeah.
Obviously, one of the key things is he wears the suit, or at least the shirt with the giant skull on the front.
So he wears like a long black trench coat and a shirt with a like amazing skull on it.
Do you think that they'll adopt a similar kind of introduction like they did with Daredevil? Is that, you know, he was kind of just quite understated until you know, the last episode?
I don't know, because we've talked about this, and I think I would be up for them just going, this is a guy, this is what he's doing, he's already the Punisher.
Right.
Like, you don't need that much backstory for him, because you just, you know, I'd rather them, if they were going to focus on that, I'd rather them focus on his own thing, whereas I kind of want him, I don't know how much I want the Punisher to be a part of Daredevil's sort of world. I think I want him to be a character in it, but I don't want him to be like, you know, the big guy in it.
Right.
But then they could also deal with, I like the fact, you know, we've talked about them being against each other. Maybe that is what it's going to be. Maybe the Punisher is going to be the big bad guy for that series.
Well, that's what I thought. You know, could he be this season's Wilson Fisk? Who knows? But in preparation for season 2 coming out, what are the kind of graphic novels that you would recommend people read?
Okay, so I mean, if you go back and read any of Garth Ennis's Punisher, like his Marvel Max run, which started in like 2004, I think, that is all gold. Right. Like if you can get a hold of any of that. But there's also quite a lot of Daredevil Punisher stuff as well. So my favourite ones are Child's Play, which is an old one but very, very good, and Means and Ends.
Gotcha.
Which is another really, really cool storyline. But yeah, I mean, if you want just a Punisher thing, go for the Punisher Marvel Max Garth Ennis stuff, because it is so good. So
that is why we are super psyched for Jon Bernthal becoming the Punisher in Daredevil Season 2. Let us know what you think at superheroshow@ign.com, and we'll be back same time next week.